So, this is what it feels like to live in a post-Diablo 4 announced world. And it's kind of fucking awesome. Assalamu alaikum YouTube. Blizzard came out swinging with this game. I was hoping that they would do that, and they did not. At least they did not disappoint me, because what they showed last night with Diablo, I just want to say one thing to Blizzard. Next time, don't plan your event like showing Diablo fucking first when it comes to Blizzcon, because once you show Diablo first and when you're putting on such awesomeness on the screen, yeah, nothing else really matters. Like watching Sylvanas tear up the mask of the Lich, I don't know what he was, the Lich King, I think, yeah. Who gives a fuck, right? After seeing Lilith come down from the sky and the way she was like not giving a shit about anything, yeah, nothing else matters. Blizzard has really knocked it out of the park in my opinion with Diablo 4, because this really looks like a real return to the dark and depressing roots of the original Diablo. Not even Diablo 2, especially not Diablo 3, the real dark Diablo 1 that I still consider one of the best horror games that have ever come out. Because you know what, when you have that sword in your hand, you're down in the labyrinth and only your will to go on, that's what makes a really awesome game. Now there were some things that were talked in detail about this game. I'm just gonna give you my opinion on those. There are some things that are kind of like a fear for me, because some things that I heard were not too I don't know, appealing to me, but we're gonna get into them in a minute. Now first I have to say that, like I said in my previous video, if there was one company that could actually pull off an open world in an isometric view in an ARPG, it was Blizzard. And I kind of predicted that, and I am so glad I did, because Diablo 4 is going to be an open world game with a non-linear story and a really dark and depressing world, and those three things are pretty much everything that I really want in a serious ARPG or a serious RPG game. Now a non-linear story basically means that yeah, we're gonna have a main path, but then there are gonna be side quests and other stuff to do around the world, and just like Skyrim, just imagine Skyrim in an isometric view in a much cooler world than where Elder Scrolls takes place, at least for me. That was pretty awesome to me, and like I said, if there was one company who can actually pull off an entire seamless open world in an isometric view, it's only Blizzard, and I freaking can't wait to see what they actually show more about this world. Now one thing that really concerns me about this open world model is that one of the developers actually mentioned that this is kind of like an MMO game. So yeah, I don't think there is anything true single player like I want to call it. I don't think you can actually go about this entire game in a pure single player experience. They said that you're gonna have to come across people. Even if you don't interact with them, you're gonna come across people, and that is kind of depressing and kind of worrying for me, because Diablo has always been this separate game where you can really enjoy this dark and really horrific experience and this adventure alone, and that is one of the most beautiful parts about this game. And when you're doing it in a team or a group, I don't know if that's gonna be really interesting to do, but hey, we'll see what happens. The game isn't there is no kind of release date even, so yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen. Next, I want to quickly touch upon the character customization. They mentioned that you can really customize your characters this time around. You don't only have an option about the male and female versions of your favorite classes, but you actually go and customize them, change their faces and their hairstyles and all the usual stuff that comes around with the RPGs. But one of the best things that I heard from one of the developers is that this time around there are going to be no ridiculous armors or weapons like they were in Diablo 3. Now Diablo 3 was always felt much more like World of Warcraft when it came to its aesthetics, like the enemies, the armors, the weapons and stuff. It was kind of really wonky for a game that was kind of grounded into reality. You look at Diablo 1, and I have always said you can, if you don't know the whole story of Diablo, you can actually just think that Diablo 1 takes place in a really remote medieval European town, village or some place. Diablo 2 kind of introduced us with all the mystery and the fantasy surrounding this series, but still it was pretty much grounded in reality. The armors and the weapons were pretty much believable and looked like they could actually come out from the real world as compared to the stupid stuff that was in Diablo 3. Now if any of you are getting the feeling that I am actually dissing on Diablo 3, I kinda am, but you have to understand my perspective. I'm not dissing on the artists and the people who actually came up with the aesthetics of Diablo 3. I'm just dissing those people who thought that it was a good idea to insert rainbows and colors to this bleak and dark universe. And I'm kinda like I am dissing on Diablo 3 right now. Let me just tell you all this. The armors and weapons of Diablo 3 are some of the best I have ever seen come out in this fucking gaming industry. They were really unique and awesome to look at. They just didn't have a place for me, at least in the Diablo universe, because like I said, Diablo is supposed to be grounded in reality, and that is where the entire horror aspect of this game comes from, and it should come from. So I really think that Diablo 4 takes it all the way back to the roots of the original Diablo, not even Diablo 2, because that has some kind of like more fantasy element to it. It needs to really go back to the original horror roots of Diablo 1. And I think they have learned their lesson and they're gonna pull that off, because the druid actually looks like a Viking dude, if you didn't notice. And we have Conan the Barbarian here, so yeah, I think it's gonna be much more grounded into reality. And the way they were talking about the armors being very realistic and appropriate of like something that these people would actually wear in real life. I'm really glad that Diablo is making a comeback with its really dark horror roots. Now one thing that I really hope that they actually try to fix is the entire story of Diablo, because Diablo 3 really kind of fucked the entire story up, for me at least, when they introduced their Nephilim shit, and yeah, it was just a big steaming pile of shit. I really hope that they can move forward with the story. We're gonna talk about that in an entirely different video. Just let me say that yeah, I really hope they actually end up fixing the lore of Diablo and they get rid of all of this stupid Nephilim shit. And you know what? Yeah, really hope they can pull something of a retcon here and give us something really awesome. Now the biggest thing that got the cheer out of a really hard crowd, I have to say that the crowd were kind of like being an assholes with these three developers, because nobody was cheering or clapping even when they were like putting out some really cool stuff. I don't think there was anything you can be angry about. But one thing that actually got an applause were the skill trees and the rune system. Now we don't know anything too much about them, so we're gonna talk about them later when they come around. But let me just say, putting it out there, skill trees and runes are back. And it's pretty obvious Blizzard has learned his lesson of not fixing what is not broken. I just hope that they can kind of like reinvent the wheel over here with this skill tree system and really give us something new and fresh with it. Now the last thing that I want to say is that yeah, there is absolutely no idea for a release date for this game. I read somewhere it was supposed to be announced last year, but then people would have bitched about that there being actually no like release date even on this BlizzCon. So yeah, that's pretty much it. What we got here was some really early looks. Like I think it's only pre-alpha at this point, so we're just gonna have to wait and see what Blizzard had in store for it. But what we saw right here, I'm pretty hopeful for this game, and I really hope that they can turn it around and pull it off. That's it for today, people. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it, subscribe it, and take care.